This is Media Critique number 2 podcast, reviewed by Katherine Watts. We're reviewing The Art of Well-Being with Dr. Cole, the protein deep dive for longevity and energy with co-host Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. Dr. Will Cole is a chiropractor, functional medicine practitioner, doctor of natural medicine, and he has a focus on nutrition, functional medicine and nutrition. He is also a lifestyle coach and has a telehealth business and is named one of the top 50 functional and integrative doctors in the nation. And he is the host of the Art of Wellbeing podcast, as well as an author of the following books. Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, she's a board certified physician, keynote speaker, influencer, and she has her own podcast. She has the founder of the Muscle Centric Medicine, and she's an author, which we see in this podcast. And she also works at a private practice called Strong Medical, where she employs physicians, nutritionists, and wellness experts. I am primarily reviewing the podcast off of YouTube, which mostly looks to the creators to be responsible for the accuracy of the material posted. However, it is shared on the websites and Spotify and Apple Podcasts. The conflict of interest, Dr. Will Cole, he does have his own books, telehealth business, podcast. He's an author, but he's also recommending products like the Fatty 15 capsules, IQ bar products, cookware, moisturizers. There's a lot that he is promoting here. And then Dr. Lyon is also promoting her own books and her own shows, podcasts, and telehealth business. This is a huge reach. It's 3.8 thousand views in 5 months since it's been posted on YouTube, and it appears that the creator is trying to sell and inform along with Dr. Lyon. Our first claim is a direct claim that lower saturated fat guidelines cause rising obesity and heart attacks, and is partially supported by the literature, but is kind of taken out of context. The Yamada et al. 2025 is a systematic and meta-analysis review of 9 random controlled trials. They found no significant difference in cardiovascular mortality, all-cause mortality, myocardial infarction, or coronary events between saturated fat reduction and control groups. Amaraburu et al. 2024 is an umbrella review of 21 meta-analyses, 3 RCTs, 18 cohorts. And I found that saturated fat reduction probably reduces combined cardiovascular events with moderate certainty, but found no effect at all or all of cause of mortality for cardiovascular mortality specifically. These show that more of a moderate outcome-specific effect rather than the guidelines failed. Take that Dr. Lyon shares by changing some of that information from the literature. Dr. Lyons used literature from research from Dr. Kevin Mackey, PhD. He is a researcher, very well versed in the material, and he did an interview, the Doctor's Kitchen podcast, and he shared that not all saturated fats are harmful. What matters more is that the saturated fatty acid chain length and the food sources rather than treating saturated fat as one whole number. So essentially he's saying that there's differences in the fatty acids by their chain lengths and that the food matrix affects how saturated fat behaves metabolically. This is much different than saturated fats are not bad. The second claim is that NHANES data shows that people are eating about 1.1 gram per kilo of protein and that it shows it is a nutritional inadequacy problem because it falls short of her recommended 1.6 grams per kilo. This is an implied claim and is partially supported by the evidence. It is dependent on age, population, and outcomes, and it is probably based on Berryman, CE et al. In 2018. Dr. Lyon potentially used this study to analyze the data from NHANES in 2001 to 2014. and that found that mean relative protein intake was roughly 1.1 plus or minus 0.01 grams per kilo ideal body weight per day in adults aged 71 and older, the lowest of any age group in the data set, and this number is specific to the oldest adult age bracket, not the general population. Nunes EA et al. 2022 shows that this is a meta-analysis of 74 RCTs that found that protein intake at or above 1.6 grams per kilo produced a small increase in lean body mass, but only in younger adults doing resistance training. Advanced Nutrition 2020 is a separate systematic review and meta-analysis of RCTs found that RDA of 0.8 grams per kilo adequately maintained lean mass in adults who are not under any other stressors. Cronk et al. 2019 reviewed NHANES again and found that only 3% of men aged 19 to 30 fall below the RDA of 0.8 grams per kilo compared to 19% of women 71 and older. So this shows the claim that half of the people are below 1.1 if applied to a general population is a misrepresentation of a young adult population that's overwhelmingly meeting even higher targets. Dr. Lyon uses a lot of emotional appeals by creating this sense of urgency to change and increase the amount of protein you are taking each day. And if you don't know how to do that, then she has a book. Her and Dr. Cole both use these supplements and protein bars, and you can fill voids from your diet with 3 to 6 bags of supplements. Another thing that she mentioned was that when she was on her vegetarian diet, she lost all of her hair. So that kind of puts that fear factor in you as well to make sure that you are following a appropriate diet with all the protein. She uses a lot of technical language as well, stating that is a fact when referencing recommendations. So it kind of creates this medical professional speaking to another medical professional, and it carries a lot of weight when looking at the content. They use medical terms for disease states and for supporting their diets and views to the layperson they may not fully understand. They can also use other doctors that they may know by name dropping several names, and both doctors also share that they have followed other diets, as I had mentioned earlier, and they did not have success. Nothing moved the needle per the podcast. And Dr. Lyon also shared about her vegetarian diets, how she lost her hair. She shared that she once started eating more red meat and eggs, that these issues went away, indicating a massive solution that happened. And it also sounds like increasing to 1.1 gram per kilo a day is also a bad, even though it is a higher recommendation than the RDA. So you've got to hit that 1.6 per Dr. Lyon. Some things that might have been omitted would be that 1.6 grams per kilo of protein intake in that Nunes et al. 2022. It shows that this applies to young resistance-trained athletes and affects were marginal in older adults. And these increased protein needs are very age-specific and shouldn't be generalized. The RDA of 0.8 grams per kilo is specifically designed to maintain nitrogen balance in nearly all healthy adults. So if someone is below 1.6 grams per kilo, this is not a deficiency. They simply fall below the target that has a modest population-specific supporting evidence. I think that the podcast format is helpful for Dr. Lyon as she is in a collaboration with Dr. Cole. It gives more credibility, and they know each other, so they already seem to be aligned rather than two experts necessarily agreeing. It seems like they have that close-knit friendship. I would also say that the length of the podcast was pretty long, making it harder for the consumer to understand, and it may be information overload. And both doctors use saturated fat heart attack framing in that NHANES 1.1 grams per kilo figure and treat it as inadequacy rather than the optimized gap. They use critical language around the essential amino acid, implying necessity if your diet is anything other than perfect, take these supplements. The intended audience is likely health-focused adults, roughly 30 to 60 years old, probably women, and the audience probably believes that conventional dietary guidance is a bit outdated or weaker in evidence. Low harm would be supplement spending. Moderate would be increasing protein if you have renal issues. And a higher harm scale would be dismissing the red meat and cancer link risk, since there is evidence based on dietary risk with this population. Does this reach harm status? Potentially. Both have a huge viewing status, but overall increasing protein likely won't hurt the masses of consumers. And these are references.